What inspired this book or recipes?
I think talking about how alone I am was a really good start for the idea.
Hi, I'm Joe Gitter.
And I'm Samantha Block.
And this is an episode of Ask ATK, where we're here to answer your most pressing questions on cooking for one. Let's get started. Are you going to ask the first question? Am I going to ask the first question?
I think I'm going to ask you first, because I'm already nervous.
Okay.
So I'm going to take it away with you.
All right. This is going to be great, Sam. This is going to be awesome.
Okay, so Somers A21 asks, what are some staple things that you always have on hand?
Good. Love that question because, cooking for one or cooking for a couple of people means you're not going to want to have a load of ingredients, but you want to have a few ingredients to hand at any time. So you could just use them. When you need to make yourself a proper meal. And there are some things that just really liven up a meal. And I think things like kimchi, fermented goods are just your best friend here. So kimchi, fish sauce, anchovy paste, and then you've got to have things like hard cheeses, like parm or pecorino. All of these things can just transfer a plain piece of protein or a plain vegetable into something really special. And then I think on top of that, you've always got to have eggs, right? Because you want to have scrambled eggs or an omelette, put an egg on it. That can turn, very humble food like a salad or just, a little sandwich into a proper meal. What about you? What do you think? Anything else I'm missing?
I agree. I feel like we are all huge fans of putting an egg on it at the end of the day. When all else fails, just put an egg on it. But I also need to have peanut butter for both dessert and entree. Spicy peanut noodles are fantastic to pull out of your pantry. And by the way, let's not mess around. Chunky all the way.
Not smooth, no?
Nope.
You want to feel your peanut butter when it's going down.
It has to have a little crunch or else I'm out. So it's fine.
Okay, Sam. I think this is definitely a question for you.
Oh, boy.
This is from Random Girl 962, and she is said very articulately and efficiently, cake for one, ?
I really appreciate that question. I like that it's simple, to the point, and also very important when it comes to cooking for one, because the last thing you want is a huge cake for one. I have very good news, because we have a desserts chapter for cooking for one, which involves a great deal of mug cakes. And not just chocolate mug cakes, but we also experimented with s'mores cake that's full with a ooey gooey marshmallow and graham cracker filling. We also have a lemon mug cake with poppy seeds and I think blueberry jam. So we're taking mug cakes to a whole other level, so you can absolutely have cake for one every day, and it's okay. So I'm very excited about that.
Right, because you worked on the Cooking for One book, and you were basically the Cooking for One cake expert, right?
That is my nickname, yes. So
is that right?
I've been called worse things.
You like being pigeonholed. You can be the cake woman, the pasta woman.
Yeah, but only for one. I lose my title when there's two people involved, so it's cool.
So how do you make? What's the basic formula for a microwave cake? Because I've got to say I've never made a microwave mug cake before.
Can we not do that? Just because I don't.
All right. So what you're saying is look the recipe up and shut the bang up. Okay, got it. Next question.
Next question.
You know what,
Joe,
Sam, it's fine. I'm waiting till the book is going to be published, and I'm going to find out how you make microwave mug cake.
So I can't for the life of me remember. So,
let's do it.
All right, Joe, it's your turn. You're in the hot seat again.
Okay. I'm ready.
So,
give it to me.
GRN Butterfly says, hate leftovers. Ideas?
Hate leftovers. Okay. So that's an interesting one, because at the moment I'm finding I'm cooking pretty much with leftovers all the time, right? Because you don't want to have food that's going to waste, particularly in the current environment. So I think, and that's because I'm shopping for a family, but I think the way to deal with leftovers is you just have to think carefully about what it is that you're buying. So if you're buying meat, you're not going to buy a roast. You're not going to buy like 3 steaks. You're just going to buy the exact amount you're going to want to eat for that particular meal. Another great option is sausages, right? Sausages, you can wrap them up individually, you can freeze them, and then that way they'll always be there for you, ready to hand. Other things you can do is you got to get comfortable with your freezer, because freezer is just an amazing resource to have. Like, you're hungry and then you remember that you've got a portioned out bit of soup or stew, and all you need to do is just simply cook some rice, or if you've got some rice from yesterday, reheat it. So it's really like changing the way I think that you think about food. And it's, unfortunately, most recipes just give you too much food if you're just cooking for one person. Like, it's very few that a recipe is actually tailored for one person. All right, this is good for you as the solo pasta maker. How many ounces of pasta? The lonely pasta maker. How many ounces of pasta per person? I buy 8-ounce box and I can't get it right. And that's from Brit the British.
Oh, do you know her?
Hold on, let me think. No, I don't know.
Okay, great. I know there's a lot of anyway. So
well, a lot of interbreeding, a lot of what is it?
So to answer your question, Brit the British, when it comes to amount of pasta per person, we generally call for 3 to 4 ounces per person, depending on how hungry you are. And highly recommend just having a scale on hand. That's an epic piece of equipment to have on hand. Just so easy to just throw your pasta right on it and see how much you're using. Because yes, prior to working on this book, I always overdid the pasta, and then I always overate the pasta, and that was just an ongoing problem that needed fixing. So yeah, we opt for 3 to 4 ounces per person.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And it's like, you do see on the side of package, sometimes it says 2 ounces per person, and like that is like minuscule.
That's a joke.
That's never going to be a meal. It's a sick joke for them to tell you that you're eating fewer carbs.
Yeah,
exactly. It's made up by the pasta conglomerates, the international conglomerate.
Unless you're having like a 2-course pasta meal and each course is 2 ounces, then you're set.
What sandwich between the soup and the steak course, right?
Oh my God. Awesome. All right, let's move on. I'm going to ask you the next question, Joe. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Jared Rogers wants to know, what are the best ways to take advantage of Costco Sam's Club?
Okay, so I'm thinking like, there are cheaper. There tend to be cheaper prices at these sorts of members clubs, but you buy them in bigger quantities. But then how does that relate to cooking for one? Because you don't really want to buy a 6-pound brisket and make it for one, because that ain't going to work very well. So I got to say, I think the things that I've done before that I've really liked when you find the opportunity to buy a big piece of meat relatively inexpensively, things like tenderloin. Tenderloin, can be like $20-30 a pound at the butcher. But if you go to some of these warehouse places, you can get them for like $8-9 a pound, and that's fantastic. But of course, what are you going to do with 20 pounds or 10 pounds of cheap meat? I think the best thing to do when you're buying meat in bulk is to cut them into individual steaks. Now, obviously, you have to make sure it's a cut that works for a steak. So things like ribeye, prime ribeye, tenderloin, sirloins, top sirloins, things like that. And I like to cut them into individual steaks and then wrap them individually. And then that way, I've got a steak tomorrow if I need it. And if in a real pinch, you can defrost a steak in like 15-20 minutes, running it under cold water at the sink, or lukewarm water if you want to speed things up a little bit. And then you've got some awesome steaks ready to go. Then other things you could do, I think also, what else could you do? I think that's pretty much it.
I think that's a great answer.
Are you a visitor of these sorts of stores?
I don't.
Do you buy in bulk?
No, I really don't. But I could see things like canned goods being essential. Things that you could save money on in that way, as far as things that have a, exponentially longer shelf life. And yeah, I think the meat thing is on point. I think that taking advantage of these places for your protein is great, as long as, you're wrapping them properly and keeping them in your freezer. And then that's one less thing to even worry about when it comes to the components of your meal. So, yeah.
That's right. And and we know that like when it comes to things like steaks, raw steaks cook so much better than cooked steaks. So like it might be tempting to cook off a load of steaks and then freeze them, but when you defrost them, they won't be very good.
Yeah.
I've tried it a few times because I was like, it would be so nice to be able to pull a steak from the freezer and it's amazing, but I haven't done it just yet.
Someday. We have lots of time to figure it out, so.
Okay. All right, this is a good one. I think this is for you.
Okay.
This is from Exhouse.
All right.
Any thoughts on baking in coconuts? Thinking about souffle or chawan mushi?
Thoughts on baking in coconuts. I have thoughts, and my thoughts are to not do that, but that's just me. The way I see it, I can envision trying to crack a coconut in half in a way that won't cause damage to yourself or other items in your kitchen. And I also have this might be wrong, but I just envision coconuts in the oven cracking and like causing a scene. So I would stick to the ramekins and then maybe put the ramekins in a coconut shell so you hide it and then you can get away with it and it'll be fine.
Okay, all right. So what we figure is it could be a little hard to extract your half coconuts, and even if it's not, they could crack baking and maybe like food could get absorbed into it and things like that. So. But a serving dish, as a brilliant serving dish, we love it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as long as it's in something else.
Okay, exactly. You don't want food to touch The only food that can touch a coconut shell is coconut.
Correct.
Right?
Let it be its coconut thing. And
new food rules. Yeah. Got it.
So write that down.
Excellent.
Make sure you write that down. All right, this is interesting. Yee of 3 would like to ask, how do you half a recipe that calls for 1 egg?
Okay, that's a very good one, right? Because eggs do so much in a recipe, right? Things like the white give you structure and lift from the proteins there. An egg yolk binds really well, and also it gives you some richness. So, you could always, one of the obvious things you could do is you could separate an egg, right? And then you've got the egg white and you've got the egg yolk. But the problem is, it depends on what the recipe's for. So, if it's something just for binding, you could add just an egg yolk because that will give you a bit of richness and it will help things bind nicely without getting too much, giving you too much extra stuff. So I think it really depends. on what the recipe's for, because an egg gives you lift, it gives you structure, it helps bind and adds richness. So if you're just adding an egg for richness, then you can just add the yolk. If you're adding the egg for lift, then you can just add the egg white. And if you're adding it for both of them, you probably need to whisk the egg up together and just divide it in 2. So that's the simplest solution.
That's great.
But it's also not ideal because I don't really want half a mixed up egg sitting in my fridge. It's not really enough to make scrambled eggs with. I guess you could add it to scrambled eggs later, something like that.
Yeah, egg whites freeze really well too, which is nice to keep in mind.
Yes, of course. That's good. Right. Of course. And like, if I separate an egg, I love to have just the egg white or the egg yolk because I've got the egg yolk. I can make something like a mayonnaise or a hollandaise. Easy, very useful for baked goods. And if I've got the egg white, well, you can make a meringue or you can like use it for an egg white cocktail, something like that.
Absolutely. I think cocktails are essential. But in speaking of this, with the whole egg situation, this played a big factor in the Cooking for One book when we were developing a recipe for carbonara for one. Which,
oh yes, of course.
Yeah, so after you cook your pasta and you have everything going and basically ready to finish with the egg, there was a lot of surface area on the bottom of the pan that was giving off too much heat. So every time I was adding a single egg, it was too much for the white to handle, and we kept having this curdling problem. So we just resorted to using
because there wasn't enough others. Sorry.
Yeah, no, totally. No, exactly. And so we found wild success with just using a single egg yolk, which ended up providing that richness that you were talking about and not breaking, and just combining the pasta into just, luscious richness and deliciousness. So totally.
Spaghetti carbonara for one. I don't think I've eaten it, but it sounds really good.
I'm probably going to make it after this video, so that's great.
You're gonna celebratorily cook a carbonara.
Yeah, it's what I do.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? Next question. Am I asking? You asking?
You're asking.
All right, here we go. I'm asking. All right. What inspired this book or recipes?
I think talking about how alone I am was a really good start for the idea. No, I'm just kidding. I think that there's a lot to be said about how little cooking for one books there are out there. And it's something that we keep talking about throughout this conversation today of just purchasing food for one, cooking for one, trying to not have leftovers, and also just like trying to inspire people who may be flying solo or just, have different schedules than their roommate or husband or wife or what have you. And just trying to make it sound more feasible in that way. And I think that this book really accomplished that. I mean, we have side dishes, we have single sheet pan meals, we have desserts, we have sandwiches, we've kind of got it all. So it's I think it's really great to help out those who struggle cooking by themselves. So
Totally. I mean, I've got a family, but a conventional recipe just doesn't work for me because I basically got 4 people in my family and everyone eats something slightly different. I've got a wife who eats keto. I've got a son who's basically a carnivore, another son who just eats chicken nuggets, and then me, I'm pretty fickle as well. Yeah. So it's like I feel like I'm cooking for one most of the time anyway. So it's very useful to like rethink these things, like not using a big pan, like using a small pan, like just little hints and tips and like quantities of things to buy. You don't need to make a pound of spinach when you're making spinach, whatever it is. It's just really like pinning things down for what it is that people need. And we don't sit around a big table anymore eating food cooked for 8 people. So like everything's like things have just really changed. Things have really moved on, and I think this pandemic's kind of accelerated that as well.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
It seems like it sort of came at a pretty good time.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we go. Are you ready, Joe?
I'm ready, Sam.
Oh, this is interesting because I think you'll know this I think you'll know the answer to this question much better than I would. But because you're the pro here. Danielle MCYR would like to know, what are the best ways to use the slow cooker for small yield recipes?
Okay, this is a very good question. I know about this because I worked on a slow cooker book a couple of years ago, the complete slow cooker, and I got to know my slow cooker very intimately. And it has some wonderful characteristics, and it's fantastic for cooking in big batches, but it's just not good for cooking for one person. And that's because there's a minimum fill line, and a slow cooker is very simple. It heats things up very gently, and then it turns itself off when it reaches a particular temperature. So it just has a thermostat there, and the thermostat requires a certain volume, a certain bulk, a mass of food for it to be able to operate properly. And so if you're just having a very thin layer of like soup or stew across the very bottom of the dish, the thermostat just won't operate properly, and it can actually cause them to burn out, and it will shorten their effective lives. So if you're cooking for one, you should definitely keep the slow cooker in your repertoire. But, use it to batch things up. You just have to think of it just as a factory for making future goods, future treats for yourself that you're going to be enjoying in months to come. So, the freezer and the slow cooker has to go together.
That's a great answer.
You're cooking for one.
Totally.
What are your favorite make-ahead meals for the freezer or otherwise?
Okay, this is a very good question. I mean, side note, we are going to be actually working on a make-ahead book in the near future, so look out for that moving forward, as meal planning is definitely an important part of everyone's lives, especially these days when our schedules have gone from busy to incredibly busy. But as far as my favorite meals to make ahead, this is where I just sort of jump to like soups and stews. And I know that it's summer, it's not really soup season, but there's also cold soups out there. But I just find that make-ahead wise, soups and stews can really hold up. And in fact, they're the kinds of things, or like the chilies, that get better and better every day as the flavors take more time to meld. Because I personally am also not the biggest leftover fan, so I will try to like utilize, like Joe was talking about with the grains, making a grain salad the next day after having it as a side dish. But yeah, I think that, would you agree, Joe, that, you know, make ahead friendly relies on things like low and slow cooked meals overall?
I think so, yeah. I mean, like soups, as you said. I mean, you know, you could have like a hearty soup in the fall or winter. You can have a chilled soup, like a gazpacho, or a chilled cucumber soup, a vichyssoise. But it's like, I always get tempted, like when I cook for people at home, I like to, you know, if I've got friends coming around, not that that's happened for a long time, but you know, it's like I always end up like trying to like cook components, like so blanch some vegetables and have a salad dressing here and things like that. And I think, oh, it's gonna be so easy when they come, and it just never is. I always forget something. I'm running around, and they wander into the kitchen. They're like, oh, what smells so good? You're like,
I don't know.
Please, I'm in the middle of cooking. Can you just leave me alone? And they're like, oh, I haven't seen you for 3 months, and it's just like, please, just leave me alone. Just let me make you food. But like the true make ahead, it has to be a soup or a stew, because it's basically ready. You put it on the stove, you put it on the hob, and it's gonna be there ready for you. And I think that's really the way to do it. It has to be a complete meal.
Speaking of that, I think like whenever you make marinara sauce, which can be used in so many different dishes, just make. I was just gonna curse, so I'm not going to. If you're ever making marinara sauce at home, which can be used...
Make a lot of it.
Like, make a lot of it, yeah. Not
an extremely large amount of it is what you meant to say, right? In other words.
A very large amount of it, and freeze a couple quarts of it. And then you'll always have that thing on hand to throw together eggplant rollatini, or to make a quick chicken parmesan, or just cook some pasta and have it with marinara. I think marinara is such a solid, freezable item to have in your back
right
pocket.
That's a great pasta sauce is a great one, because that's something that you can truly cook and actually requires minimal amounts of attention and focus on it. So it's absolutely that's a really good one to go for.
Okay, Joe.
Okay,
all right, you're up.
All right.
Let me see here. All right, I would love to ask this question by Bailey Bowthorpe. Her question is, what equipment essentials would you recommend when cooking for one?
Okay, this is a good one. Now, it's not super self-evident, but I think if you think about it, it really makes sense. It's just about having smaller utensils. So, you know, if you end up cooking a chicken breast, one single chicken breast in a 12-inch skillet, I mean, it just doesn't cook that well, because the sides aren't packed. It ends up not really cooking at the sides. It looks kind of anemic, you know. But whereas a smaller pan helps you retain the heat, and then not only that, it's quicker to heat up. It's easier to wash up. I love using small bowls, a small whisk, a little spatula. All these things just make cooking and then the process of cleaning up afterwards so much easier. Like, I've just been working on a toaster oven book, and for the first time in my life, I own quarter sheet pans, like these tiny little sheet pans, and they are such a delight to use in the oven, because the big ones, they don't even fit in the sink, and these tiny ones, they just fit in there. The food cooks much better, and I feel like smaller utensils is so important when you're cooking for one person. It just makes things so much easier and more manageable.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about you? Like, when you were developing recipes for the book, were there anything you found in particular that you particularly loved?
Not so much working on the book, but just from living alone. I mean, not that that's exactly the clientele we're looking at here, but if you are cooking for one and that implies that your kitchen space is very limited, I think that that's something to consider, as far as, you know, you have to really make the most out of your counter space. So, for example, you know, you don't have to take away blended items or food processed items out of your menu choices. You could totally just get an immersion blender, which you can store in your cabinet and not take up a lot of space on your counter space. But for me particularly, my favorite equipment item that I use, I think every single time I cook, is the microplane. I just love it. It grates chocolate, it grates garlic, it grates citrus fruits, it's great for cheese, it's great for nutmeg. It's just so versatile that there's nothing greater than the microplane. sorry. So sorry. Than the microplane grater. So yeah, I love that tool. I also love bench scrapers. For those of us out there who are like me and they have very tiny hands, a bench scraper is great for picking up food quantities in bigger amounts and getting them in your pan, just getting you closer to the finish line in a shorter amount of time. Could vouch for that.
So if you've got small hands, you need to have a bench scraper.
Yeah, that's the only reason why you should have a bench scraper, is if your hands are small. This is what we've established in this conversation.
I completely agree with you on the microplane. I mean, like things like garlic, right? Like garlic is such a great ingredient, but you kind of need to really mince garlic up to get the most amount of flavor. Mm-hmm. And if you're just mincing one clove of garlic, you're getting it dirty. It's going to take a while to do it. But if you're using your microplane, like you can just do it on that as well, right? So it's like it's a multi-purpose tool that means you use single appliance tools just less. Completely agree with you.
Great. I'm glad that you agree with me, Joe.
All right, so this is from Jack Creech or Jack Reach.
Oh boy.
Anyway, what's an unexpected recipe in your Cooking for One book?
Oh, this is fun. There are a lot of things that we there were a lot of things that were very exciting to make in this book. Things that I would never make by myself because of the fact that I've usually only made them in bulk. So for example, we have mashed potatoes for one, which is exactly how it sounds, and it's so easy to throw together, like something that you wouldn't ordinarily think to make for one. There's a wonderful recipe for meatloaf for one, which sounds bizarre, but it really is a single little loaf of meatloaf for one. And we actually did a version that's more Asian forward with a hoisin glaze and scallions and ginger, and it's absolutely delicious. Other things that stand out to me, I keep reverting back to the dessert chapter because that was the most challenging chapter to work on, but we really came up with some interesting things, such as an apple crisp, where you microwave the crisp topping and then you microwave the fruit and then you combine it all together and you just have this lovely little apple pear crisp, whatever tickles your fancy. We also have cookie dough, raw cookie dough. And Joe, you made those cookies for one, right?
I did. I made those cookies for one. They were excellent. Yeah. I mean, like, one normally thinks you got to make like 12 or 24 cookies, right? But that's not a pretty practical thing to be doing, particularly now, unless you want to eat 24 cookies in about 6 hours. And
I feel like you're staring at me.
It sounds like that sounds awesome. It sounds awesome, right? But then I think the most I've eaten in a single batch is maybe like 20 cookies.
Ooh.
What's the most cookies you've eaten at one time?
No comment.
No comment. Okay. All
right.
We'll gloss over that.
Okay. Let's move on. All right. So, this is very interesting. Jared Rogers would like to know what to do with the rest of the celery when a recipe only needs one stalk. Emphasis on the stalk because it was a question mark, exclamation point, question mark.
Right, because it's a big question.
Yeah,
it's a big question.
What
question. Do you do with the rest of the celery? Because it's like you can't really buy celery in single stalks, and most of the time it's just like add a stick of celery with your onion and your carrot, and then what do you do with the rest of it? I mean, I'm quite a fan of the shaved salad, right? Like, this is a great way to use up celery, and it's a great way to use up some mushrooms. So it's a super simple recipe. We developed it for our Mediterranean book, and it's shaved celery, shaved raw mushrooms, and then it's just drizzled like the last minute with like good olive oil. And you need to have good olive oil here. Drizzle it with good olive oil, some lemon juice, and a little bit of parm. And like it is such a fresh, bright, crunchy, savory, delicious salad. Like you can't make it ahead, you have to make it last minute, and that is fantastic. And then yeah, otherwise you can just use shaved celery in salads as well. I mean, there's an amazing celery Caesar that I've had before. It goes so well with it. So it's like, just think about like using it to really bulk up a salad or make it the prime component where you want like freshness and crunch and that slight like savouriness to it as well. Now, I'm a big fan of celery salads. What do you think?
I just wanted to cut you off because as you were going off on this delicious celery salad, I was just remembering, remember back in the day when you were developing that cocktail book, Joe?
I remember.
Do you remember that book?
The cocktail book.
Do
you know what? I remember complaining about martini tastings at 9:15 in the morning. I'm like, that's sounding quite good now. That's sounding quite good now.
Yeah, the cocktail book would have been a dangerous book to work on during quarantine for sure.
Yes.
But I'm just remembering because this was like one of my favorite cocktails that I was fortunate enough to try when you were going through. I know you did something with arugula, but you also did a celery. Was it a celery gimlet?
A celery. We did.
Oh
we made a celery gimlet. Yes.
Oh my god.
That is really good.
That blew my mind. I wish I could have one right now.
You know what?
What?
You know what?
What?
I've got some celery. I've got some celery.
No
I
way.
can make a celery gimlet. I can make a celery gimlet.
What time?
What's the time? It's like it's middle to late in the day.
But if we're working on UK time, we should be fine. Are you gonna make one?
Okay.
This is amazing.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna make
I'm
one.
so
Hang on,
excited.
I'm just going to the fridge. I need my celery.
Oh my god.
What else do I need? I need some lime juice.
Wow. Impromptu cocktail time is the best time.
Hold on, I'm coming. Okay, luckily I've got the bar stuff in the same place. Got my
You're
shaker,
ready.
I've got my muddler.
This is so
got my
awesome.
strainer. Okay, what else we need? We've got the celery, we've got that. What else do I need? Ice.
Do you have clear ice or just regular ice, Joe?
I don't have, no one makes clear ice at home. All right, so this is such an easy recipe. Okay, so you start off with 1 stick of celery, and then you just slice it thin.
Okay.
All right, you got to stand up. Do you ever cook sitting down? I can't cook sitting down.
I've only made Chinese dumplings sitting down because it's a very tedious hands-on situation. That's it.
Yeah, I mean things like cutting, things where you just have to.
Yeah.
Things where you just have to. Look, feels so weird. I feel like I'm going to chop my finger off like any second. All right, so I'm going to stop doing that right now. Okay, so you make it like this.
Okay.
All right, so you got your cocktail shaker. The smaller part of the cocktail shaker. Put in 1 stick of celery that you just cut up.
Okay.
And then, so this is a sour drink, right? So this is basically citrus juice and a sweetener. So it is 3/4 of an ounce. Right? Yeah, 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup. Mm-hmm. So simple syrup is just water and sugar, equal quantities. I mean, people talk about heating it up, but you don't need to heat it up. You could just literally add, 5 ounces of sugar, 5 ounces of water, put it in a jam jar, and then just shake it really well. It takes about a minute, and then it'll be cloudy at first, but then it'll settle, and then you can just keep it in the fridge.
That's interesting.
And it lasts for months. Yeah, it's super easy. Like, you don't need to heat it up. People always talk about heating up your simple syrup to aid in dilution, but as long as to aid in dissolving it. But as long as you shake it for long enough and you use slightly warm water, it works really easily. So, this is a sour cocktail. So I'm using 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup and 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. So that's what goes into a gimlet. We're going to add the simple syrup to the celery, and then you take a muddler. I've got a nice little. It looks like a bowling pin. And for this, you have to stand up.
Of course.
Stand up.
A little elbow grease in there. This is so exciting.
Yeah,
I'm so jealous right now.
I haven't really, but of course, like making a cocktail, that's like the ultimate recipe for one, right? Because
Yes.
Because it's like you're putting so much craft and care into it.
Into your own little shaker.
You got these. You got a little shaker. All right, so we add the celery. The celery has been muddled with the simple syrup, and now I need to add some lime juice. So I've just got a lime. I need a citrus reamer. I love these things. Have you got one of these at home?
Yes, it's essential.
It's essential. I mean, you can always use like a fork or something, a pinch to squeeze lime juice, but it's just so nice to just have this reamer that just gives it to you straight away. All right, so this is a sweet and sour cocktail. So we got the simple syrup, we got the celery, we've now got 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Gonna add some gin.
Do you have the good
Most
stuff?
gins work.
Oh yeah, you got the good stuff.
I got the good stuff. What have I got? Yeah, I've got the green bottle. That's right. The green bottle, pretty good.
With no label on it at all.
That's right.
Doesn't rhyme with
and I'm
schmangeray.
gonna take my gin. It rhymes with schmangeray, exactly. And then we're gonna just fill it up with ice cubes. Now this is for me, so I can definitely use my fingers. That's one of the really nice things about cooking for one.
Yeah.
You never need to worry about like tasting from the pot and like shoving a spoon in, and because it's like for me that's part of the whole cooking process, right? Like part of the cooking process is the smelling, the tasting, the touching, and like you can eat it sterilely. You know, you use a serving spoon to scoop it up and another serving spoon to taste it, but it's like in the heat of the moment, it's like you just want to just shove your spoon in and taste it. No, it needs a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that.
At the end of the day, you're just going to be eating the mashed potatoes right out of the skillet, and it's fine. There's no rules.
So is that your? So that's Sam's. That's Sam's like
Saturday.
Conventional way in which you eat.
Welcome to Sam's weekend activities.
So Saturday. Okay, all right. So there we go. So we've got the small one, got the big tin. Shove it in. It's gonna make a little bit of noise, and we're just gonna shake it.
Woo! Music to my ears.
Have you got a cocktail shaker at home?
I do. But I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have celery, which is a sad thing to say, because otherwise I'd be happy to join you.
Okay.
But you shouldn't drink alone, right?
What have you got? Yeah, you go and get a drink.
All right, just give me a second. This shouldn't take long, because
Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna take the gimlet, and then we just pour it into our glass, and hopefully there should be like a little bit of like foam at the top from the agitation. And you've got this beautiful drink, slightly green. And then like you can garnish it if you want. Garnish it with celery leaves. Maybe like a single celery leaf, something like that. Here we go. All right, this is definitely going to fortify us.
I'm ready to...
Are you back? What have you got?
I've got a Pinot Grigio. I'm feeling bougie today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right, I'm going to put this in. This is going to fortify us for the second half of the show, right?
We're only halfway done.
For the next 3 hours... For the next 3 hours of Ask Sam and Joe stuff.
Drinking for one with Sam and Joe.
Cheers.
Cheers,
That's
Joe.
right. Together. Alone together or something. Yes. Cheers.
How is it? Tell me everything. Is it delicious?
Oh, it's so good because the very first thing you taste is the celery.
Oh.
So you're like, oh,
yeah.
It's like a strong, savoury drink. And then afterwards, you get the backbone of the gin, right? Which is obviously like very floral, all the aromatics that are blended into gin. And then you get the sweet sour. So it's like savoury, gin, like, aromatic, flavourful. And then you get the sweet sour, like fresh lime juice with just the right amount of sweetness. Like, it's such a good drink.
Amazing. You guys did some amazing things with that book. That's for sure.
And I mean, like, what's great is like muddling is just such an easy way to get flavors into food, and like you can do it with arugula, you could do it with like snap peas, you could do it with snow peas, regular peas, fennel, like all these things that you can infuse like a lot of flavor into them. And it's such a nice thing to be able to like experiment by yourself, because if you make a disgusting drink, well,
chug it.
You're the only person who's going to suffer. You just got to chug it. That's right.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, Joe, that was amazing, and I really wish that I could be sharing that drink with you, but you know what? This was really fun. And for those of you out there, thanks so much for watching.
So for more recipes and tips, head to americastestkitchen.com. See you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's awesome.
Chug it.